The moment the rusted pickup rolled onto the shoulder of the sunlit highway, everything Harry Hale believed he had locked away for survival came rushing back at once. Heat shimmering off the asphalt, the sky painfully blue above him, and ahead a lone police cruiser sat with its hood raised, hazard lights blinking quietly against the silence. And without hesitation Harry pulled over because helping stranded drivers had become instinct long before life hardened him. But the instant the officer stepped forward and removed her sunglasses, Harry's breath caught hard in his chest as past and present collided, because that face, older, steadier, marked by responsibility, was unforgettable, tied to the worst and bravest day of his life, and suddenly the noise of the road faded as memory stood directly in front of him. Harry had been a single father long before he ever planned to be one, now nearly 40. His hands permanently marked by grease, scars, and small burns from years beneath broken engines. His modest auto shop sitting just outside a quiet Midwestern town most people passed without noticing, much like Harry himself, and every morning after dropping his 10-year-old son Noah at school, Harry worked until his shoulders ached, fixing cars, packing lunches, paying bills late, hiding exhaustion, and never speaking about the past because daylight made survival easier and silence kept grief contained. And that morning he had been driving home early to surprise Noah with lunch when he spotted the stranded cruiser, expecting nothing more than a simple repair. The officer watched Harry work, recognition slowly settling in, and when their eyes finally met fully something softened between them, because years earlier she had stood in a hospital hallway while Harry held his newborn son alone on the day his wife Emily never came home, a hit and run, screaming sirens, paperwork signed with shaking hands, and she had been the officer assigned to the case, the one who stayed after her shift ended, the one who found the driver days later, the one who gently explained that justice didn't always feel like justice, and now on that silent roadside neither spoke, because some moments didn't need words. As Harry finished the repair and wiped his hands, ready to leave before emotion overwhelmed him, the officer reached into her cruiser and handed him not a citation but a small card, and Harry's heart skipped as realization struck, because years earlier when pride kept him silent, anonymous help had arrived. Groceries, childcare, quiet support, and he finally understood who had remembered him, and the truth hit harder than grief ever had, that he had never truly been alone, and they nodded once to each other, a silent closure passing between them as Harry drove away with blurred vision, pulling over miles later just to breathe. Days passed but the encounter stayed with Harry, changing small things as he began helping others more, smiling more, talking to Noah about Emily not as a wound but as a love worth honoring, learning that healing wasn't loud or dramatic but quiet and persistent, sometimes disguised as a broken-down cruiser on a bright highway, and weeks later a letter arrived at his shop with no return address, a simple note of thanks not for the repair but for stopping, for reminding someone why kindness mattered. And as Harry locked up his shop one warm afternoon with sunlight pouring across the road, he understood that some faces are unforgettable not because of pain but because they mark moments where humanity chose compassion over indifference. That understanding stayed with Harry longer than he expected, settling into his days quietly but firmly, and as weeks turned into months, he noticed how that single moment on the empty highway had reshaped the way he moved through the world, because he no longer rushed past broken things the way he once had, whether it was a stalled car, a tired neighbor, or even his own memories, and there were evenings when he would close his shop late, hands sore, sunset stretching across the road in front of him, and instead of feeling the familiar weight of loneliness, he felt gratitude, a steady warmth that reminded him he was still part of something larger than loss, and sometimes, while driving those same back roads, he would spot a police cruiser in the distance and feel a quiet hope rather than pain, knowing that kindness had traveled further than he ever realized, touching lives in ways no one kept score of. And at home, when Noah asked questions about the past, Harry no longer avoided them, choosing honesty over silence, teaching his son that strength wasn't about carrying pain alone but about allowing compassion to shape you without shame. And on one ordinary afternoon, while fixing a car for a stranger who couldn't afford the repair, Harry caught his reflection in the shop window and barely recognized the man looking back, not because he had changed everything, but because something inside him had softened, healed just enough to let light in, and he understood then that the road where he once stopped wasn't just a place where the past returned, it was where the future quietly began, because kindness doesn't always announce itself, it simply continues, passed forward through small choices, steady hands, and the courage to stop when others keep driving. And Harry knew now that as long as he kept choosing that kindness, the story that once started with loss would never truly end in silence.